बहुत स्वागत है तुहाडे सारिਆਂ ਦਾ ਹੈਡਲਾਈਨ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੀ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਇਸ ਖਾਸ ਪੇਸ਼ਕਸ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਟੋਰਾਂਟੋ ਤੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਜਸਲੀਨ ਕੌਰ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਫਿਰ ਤੋਂ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹਾਂ। ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਪੀਲ ਰੀਜਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੱਧ ਰਹੇ ਮੁੱਦਿਆਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਸਮੱਸਿਆਵਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ। गन एंड गैंग वायलेंस, डोमैस्टिक वायलेंस, कार्डिंग, सड़क हादसे, मैंटल हैल्थ क्राइसिस सने होर कई ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ मुद्दे जो शहर वासियों के दिलों के विच सुरक्षा नूं लैके चिंता पैदा करते हैं। इस ते आधारित रहेगी साडी अज की एक खास पेशकश। आओ शुरू करते हैं अज का एपीसोड। हाल ही दे विच पील पुलिस वालों मैंटल क्राइसिस रैपिड रिस्पॉन्स टीम लॉन्च की गई है, जिसका मकसद होगा मैंटल हैल्थ क्राइसिस दे नाल जूझ रहे लोगों की समय सिर अते सही ढंग दे नाल देखभाल करना। मैंटल क्राइसिस रैपिड रिस्पॉन्स टीम की ऑफिशियली लॉन्च लई एक खास समागम उलीकिया गया सी, जिथे पील पुलिस चीफ ने मीडिया नूं संबोधन करदिआं दस्सिया कि शहर दी नागरिकां दी सही ढंग नाल देखभाल करना साडी पहली तरजीह है। इस संबंधी पेश है एक खास रिपोर्ट। पील रीजनल पुलिस वालों कैनेडियन मैंटल हैल्थ कोलिशन एसोसीएशन दे नाल मिल के मोबाइल क्राइसिस रैपिड रिस्पॉन्स टीम लॉन्च की गई है। मोबाइल क्राइसिस रैपिड रिस्पॉन्स टीम वो कॉल्स अटेंड करेगी जिथे मैंटल हेल्थ कंसर्न्स या फिर क्राइसिस दी रिपोर्ट या पहचान होवेगी।
So back in May of 2019, the Honourable Prabmeet Sakaria announced funding to support the implementation of mobile crisis rapid response teams, otherwise known as MCRT, in Peel region. MCRT is comprised of a frontline police officer partnered with a frontline crisis worker responding to priority calls for service involving mental health and addictions related crisis.
बीते दिनी इस टीम नूं पील रीजनल पुलिस चीफ निशान दुरियापा वालों ऑफिशियली लॉन्च करन लई एक खास इवेंट रखा गया।
We have a really strong opportunity to build some resiliency in this community. And what we have seen in policing, and I can tell you from day to day, I've been here 5 months and spent a lot of time in my first 3 months on the front line with officers, saw all 40 shift parades, and I can tell you statistically probably 80% of what they do is non-criminal. Despite the fact that there's a lot of activity in this community, we see the impacts of their time, resources with individuals that are suffering from whether addictions, social disorder, mental health. And when we think about what happens 24/7 is the people available to call are frontline emergency responders. And I need to tell you that our officers, as well equipped as they are, aren't always the best equipped to deal with mental health and addictions. We know that already. The opportunity for us to resolve these issues and provide services for individuals, that is what they need.
इस इनिशिएटिव की शुरुआत पिछले कई सालों तो मानसिक सेहत नाल संबंधित घटनावां दे विच हो रहे वादे कारण की गई है।
I really think a big part of making projects like these so successful is a collaboration between all levels of government, because we know when we have issues like mental health and working with policing, these are issues that transcend any political lines. This is about making great work happen right here in the city, not only in Brampton, but the region of Peel across Mississauga. I also want to take the opportunity to thank Chief Nish for all the work that he is doing and the transformative approach he has been taking to tackling many of these issues that we are facing right in the community. I also want to recognize the chair for Peel Police Board, Ron Chatta, for his support and for always being a strong advocate for the community here as well. And I also want to take the opportunity to really recognize the great work that CMHA is doing, not only in the community across the province, but helping the government and helping put together programs such as these that will really make an impact, and we're seeing the impact of it.
For us to launch the Mobile Crisis Rapid Response Team in Peel, normally we have seen, as Chief Duriappa indicated, that we have seen the frontline officers spending quite a bit of time in the hospitals. And with this team, we will have a team ready to respond to these crises. And I want to thank, on behalf of our board, to Chief and CMHA Peel Dufferin for taking the lead on this initiatives.
आंकड़े अनुसार 2015 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੀਲ ਰੀਜਨਲ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਨੇ ਮੈਂਟਲ ਹੈਲਥ ਐਕਟ ਅਧੀਨ 4488 ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਫੜਿਆ ਸੀ ਅਤੇ 2019 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਆંકੜੇ ਵੱਧ ਕੇ 5796 ਹੋ ਗਏ। हैरानी ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਨੁਮਾਨ ਲਗਾਇਆ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ ਕਿ 2017 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੀਲ ਰੀਜਨਲ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਵੱਲੋਂ $17,94,000 ਉਹਨਾਂ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਅਧਿਕਾਰੀਆਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਤਨਖਾਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਖਰਚ ਕੀਤੇ ਗਏ ਹਨ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਫੜੇ ਗਏ ਵਿਅਕਤੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਐਮਰਜੈਂਸੀ ਰੂਮਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਡੀਕ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ। ਪੀਲ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਚੀਫ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨ ਦੁਰਿਆਪਾ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਰੀਜਨ ਆਫ ਪੀਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਰੇ ਨਾਗਰਿਕਾਂ ਦੀ ਦੇਖਭਾਲ ਅਤੇ ਤੰਦਰੁਸਤੀ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਤਰਜੀਹ ਹੈ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਮੈਂਟਲ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਸਿਸ ਰੈਪਿਡ ਰਿਸਪੌਂਸ ਟੀਮ ਦੀ ਸ਼ੁਰੂਆਤ ਇਹ ਸੁਨਿਸ਼ਚਿਤ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਮਰੀਜ਼ਾਂ, ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਅਤੇ ਮਿੱਤਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਹਤਰ ਪੀਸ ਆਫ ਮਾਈਂਡ ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਅਜ਼ੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਦੀ ਸਮੇਂ ਸਿਰ ਅਤੇ ਪੇਸ਼ੇਵਰ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੇਖਭਾਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾਏਗੀ।
We're getting the right care to the right people. It's not just about how officers' time is used, but the outcomes are so significantly better for people in our community. We know we will see these individuals perhaps again. They may be seen by their physicians, by fire, by our paramedic services. But what we're doing is building resiliency in a community. No longer can policing see and do things that are traditionally done the way it was. Upstream opportunities for intervention and risk mitigation are going to be the tenets of what Peel Regional Police do. And we know that there are many programs such as this already in the province. I just want to say thank you to our funding sources, for the ministry, the support of our elected officials, both municipal, provincial, federal, and of course our partners, CMHA. We know we couldn't do this without your vision for how to build a resilient community here. And I do need to acknowledge that it also is done with our partners in the hospital streams. Both Trillium and Osler have a real commitment to ensure that our transfer of care protocols are enhanced and that all interaction points are for the best of the individuals that come into our care.
ਜ਼ਿਕਰਯੋਗ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮੈਂਟਲ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਸਿਸ ਰੈਪਿਡ ਰਿਸਪੌਂਸ ਟੀਮ ਅਧਿਕਾਰੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਾਨਸਿਕ ਸਿਹਤ ਪੇਸ਼ੇਵਰ ਨਾਲ ਜੋੜਿਆ ਜਾਵੇਗਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਸਥਿਤੀ ਦਾ ਸਹੀ ਢੰਗ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਮੁਲਾਂਕਣ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਗਿਆਨ, ਸਿਖਲਾਈ ਅਤੇ ਹੁਨਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਜਾਏਗਾ। ਸੋ ਹੈਡਲਾਈਨ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਫਿਲਹਾਲ ਸਮਾਂ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਦਾ। ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਕਰਵਾਵਾਂਗੇ ਪੀਲ ਰੀਜਨਲ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਚੀਫ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨ ਦੁਰਿਆਪਾ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ। ਬਣੇ ਰਹੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਦ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਫਿਰ ਤੋਂ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ। ਪੀਲ ਰੀਜਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੁਣ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਡੀ ਸਮੱਸਿਆ ਸਿਰਫ ਗਨ ਐਂਡ ਗੈਂਗ ਵਾਇਲੈਂਸ ਦੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਹਿ ਗਈ, ਬਲਕਿ ਡੋਮੈਸਟਿਕ ਵਾਇਲੈਂਸ ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਘਰੇਲੂ ਹਿੰਸਾ ਦੇ ਮਾਮਲਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਲਗਾਤਾਰ ਵਾਧਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਆ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ। ਪੀਲ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਚੀਫ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨ ਦੁਰਿਆਪਾ ਨੇ PTC ਨਾਲ ਕੀਤੇ ਖਾਸ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਪੀਲ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਦੀ ਟੀਮ ਜਲਦ ਹੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਪਾਰਟਨਰਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਮਿਲ ਕੇ ਇੱਕ ਟ੍ਰਾਂਜ਼ਿਸ਼ਨਲ ਹਾਊਸ ਤਿਆਰ ਕਰੇਗੀ ਜਿਸ ਦੀ ਓਪਨਿੰਗ ਸਮਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਏਗੀ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਟ੍ਰਾਂਜ਼ਿਸ਼ਨਲ ਹਾਊਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਪੀੜਤ ਮਹਿਲਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਹਿਯੋਗ ਮਿਲੇਗਾ। ਹੋਰ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਮੁੱਦੇ ਇਸ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਿਚਾਰੇ ਗਏ। ਪੇਸ਼ ਹੈ ਇੱਕ ਖਾਸ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਪੀਲ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਚੀਫ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨ ਦੁਰਿਆਪਾ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ। Joining with us, Peel Regional Police Chief Nishan Duryapa. Hello, Chief. Very warm welcome to PTC once again.
Nice to see you again. Thank you for taking that time to talk to me today.
Pleasure. Chief, I'll start with the hot topic, which is gun and gang violence, specifically in Peel region. Recently, the Peel Police received a funding from the Ontario government. It was about $20.5 million. So how that funding will be used, and will we see any more cameras on the streets and specifically on highways?
Sure, thank you for asking that question. So we did recently receive grant funding from the province, which we're very, very thankful for. And the announcement in actuality was for $1.5 million over 3 years. So that's $500,000 a year, which we can use towards frontline officers dealing with gang response and gang prevention and intervention. So for clarity, even though it's announced as 20.5, it's not really. We are getting additional funds from the province over years that that is part of that 20 million that go to impaired driving, human trafficking, court security, internet child exploitation. And so the announcement is what comes to Peel, but what is the most pertaining to what you're asking is the gun and gang violence, is the officers on the road. So and at the moment we deploy them now, so it'll go to offset the costs, which is quite significant for us. And as you know, the investigations that are involved related to gang violence are complex, and they have many people involved. Sometimes they're in public locations. Most of them are, which requires some complex crime scenes, and they're often interrelated with other violent acts, not just here in Peel, but in the Greater Toronto area. So the time and effort spent towards that is very demanding for us as a police organization. Ultimately, it is moving officers away from other policing duties, right? So the funding from the province was extremely welcomed and appreciated.
Talking about street cameras, will Peel Police be installing more street cameras and on highways specifically as well? And how is Peel Police working to increase the checks on the streets? Because when I'm driving, I still see some people who are doing distracted driving.
Sure. So those are two different issues with distracted driving and then the cameras. So as you know, the Peel Regional Police Services Board has advocated for increased cameras. The recent shooting of a mistaken identity individual, we know that Jason Ramkishoon, we're pleased to be able to announce the solving of his murder. That particular homicide happened on a public highway, and there were no physical witnesses. Nobody personally saw it happen. That whole entire investigation began with video. And it goes to show you how important that is for our officers, whether we're identifying vehicles, license plates, or people. And the increase of ability to do that from a public safety standpoint was always welcome. So we are working, and we are optimistic that in the near future we will be able to speak to a really creative, innovative initiative related to that, which will enhance the safety and security of this community. Now, as it relates to distracted driving and your observations of that, that is obviously traffic continues to be a #1 related issue we see with the growth of this region. And we know that most houses have maybe sometimes more cars than people, right?
Yeah.
And so the volume of vehicles on the roadway are always of concern, especially on major roads and in residential roads. And distracted driving is still a behavior that we need to continue to work on. It will never stop with the proliferation of a variety of mobile devices and the ability for people to continue to drive. It'll be a continued issue. We see lots of accidents related to it, and our ability to enforce it is the other half. And the more officers that we can have the time available to do that, the better. But as you know, similar to impaired driving, where we try to change people's behavior and the social norms and cultural norms around impaired driving, we find that the decision-making process for distracted driving is much the same. It takes time to continue to do that. The province and the legislation have really become extreme, have taken it very seriously, and the penalties reflect that. Right now, the penalties for impaired driving are really significant on a driver, on their insurance. So we see that this is a likely outcome, all part that we are advocates of.
Talking about carding, so some police chiefs across Canada believe that carding is an important work, is important for intelligence work, but some officers, some chiefs do not believe this. So what's your view? Should carding be there or no?
So I'd like to, finally close the book on this carding issue, because for several years now it has not been, it's been legislated that it's stopped. And now carding and street checks are two intertwined terminology. Policing had an ability to subjectively, ask for people's identification. And, back in when that process was available to policing, we knew our ability to engage and talk to people and obtain information has its value. However, at the expense of it being subjective, allowing for bias potentially to be part of the system, we knew that it was a narrative that the public and many parts of their community felt needed a change. In lieu of that, we never came up with an alternative, right? And now the province has legislated a different framework, which we also know, right or wrong, is not maybe as effective. Now, I have a different perspective on things. I believe that we have other mechanisms that are quite lawful and are endorsed by the province that we can continue to engage. I think it really comes down to our ability to have time to be able to do that. If you talk to any of my officers here, their ability to have time to go speak to individuals because of the volume of work and the pressures and also resourcing is so great that engagement is one thing that I want to bring back into policing, and it doesn't have to be in the form of a street check paradigm or carding paradigm.
Next question is about domestic violence. It's a troubling trend in GTA and specifically in Peel region. So last year, 5 police forces across GTA received over 47,000 domestic violence calls. So how is Peel Police working to bring down the numbers, specifically in Peel region?
Right, so here's the biggest thing is, domestic violence or intimate partner violence is not just a police matter, right? It affects families, children, community centers, cultural faith groups. It is a behavior and it's a cycle that a lot of people are responsible for. So, our role when it occurs is obviously to investigate and, stop the risk. We also know that there are other opportunities to go upstream and find and stop the risk. So we know that about half of our intimate partner family violence deaths last year, or homicides period, were related to intimate partner and family deaths. It's a serious one. We see gun violence and gang violence, but then that one is a continued initiative. We have commenced a pilot in one of our divisions, which is the dedication of several officers exclusively to intimate family partner violence. And it is a model that we know has been done elsewhere in the province, some organizations for quite some time. But one thing in Peel is we're trying to find the model that fits us, which will allow us to focus a better response to the investigation. The other thing that we're doing is working with multiple community agencies that are victim and offender based, so that we can work more collaboratively to find upstream activities to stop that. So for example, if there's an individual that is experiencing intimate family partner violence or domestic violence, as we traditionally called it, that they have more outlets or opportunities to seek help. And it doesn't always mean that they can come to us. They can go to the medical community, the not-for-profit, social service agencies, even their family doctor to find an off-ramp, just so that they can get crisis, transitional housing support, understanding how to manage the legal, how to come to us if they need to. And that's changed because many years ago, it was either us or they went to a hospital, right? And we are far more aware that we see the impacts of that through children in the education system. So multi-sector collaborations are the next emphasis for us. We are also, because domestic violence, intimate partner family violence, and sexual assaults are all really concurrent, we are working with our stakeholders to start intimate partner and a sexual assault advisory review committee, which comes alongside of us and looks at the work we've done with victims to say, is there an opportunity to do something better, change our processes? So it is a trend that's happening right across this province and in this country. Clearly we've had an awakening over the last 10, 15 years in how we can do better, and Peel Regional Police is committed to doing that.
What challenges do you see between the police and the community?
So the police and the community, there's many challenges, right? Because we are needed in so many different spaces, but our number one issue is that we cannot be everywhere all the time. And for me, continuing to increase resources, tax dollars in order to do that is an unsustainable model for policing. We are far more alive that we need to find other opportunities to work with agencies, people that are already in community or public safety spaces to help strengthen the net. And so that comes through different models, and one which we're going to be embarking on is the real integration of a concept called community safety and well-being. and it is being led by the region and us as a police service, and some of the municipalities are adopting it, but we as an organization are really going to embrace that, and that will bring community partners and stakeholders with us to fix those gaps that we can't get to. Always communication is big, you know, communication is really huge, and we continue to do that. Like us spending time with you is another asset for us to get the messaging out that things have to change in policing, and we're committed to that.
Absolutely. In the end, any message or advice for the residents?
Yes, I think, you know, one of the most important things is that to remember that we are a huge country, and Peel region is seeing some changes and seeing lots of challenges, but it still remains one of the safest municipalities for its size. And we also have a very supportive community from a municipal government standpoint, and stakeholders, the hospitals, the school boards are all really quite innovative. And now we have an organization that is really committed to doing some remarkable things moving forward. This region has a good future ahead.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. It was really a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you, Joseph.
ਸੋ ਹੈਡਲਾਈਨ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਐਸੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਖਾਸ ਪੇਸ਼ਕਸ਼। ਉਮੀਦ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਡੀ ਇਹ ਛੋਟੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਪਸੰਦ ਆਈ ਹੋਵੇਗੀ। ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਕੋਈ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਂਝਾ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਤਾਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਲਿਖ ਕੇ ਭੇਜੋ feedback@ptcnetwork.com ਤੇ। ਮਿਲਾਂਗੇ ਅਗਲੇ ਹਫਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਨਵੇਂ ਮੁੱਦੇ ਅਤੇ ਖਾਸ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ। ਉਦੋਂ ਤੱਕ ਦਿਓ ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ। ਧੰਨਵਾਦ।